Hello, everybody. So this is the legendary Kickstarter live Q&A for
Oh
the
yeah.
Maybe Duology. Yes. And I am here with Addison, and hopefully I can see comments as they come in. But we are here to both do questions, Q&A, and do the giveaway at the end. So Addison, if y'all don't know, I'm going to introduce him really quick and hype him up.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Addison is the author of Marrow and Soul, which is a book that I don't know if you can see these tabs, but I love dearly. Fantastic. Uh, what is it like? YA supernatural fantasy adventure ghosts?
Yeah. That's basically it. Yeah.
All the things, yes. So Addison is the author of this book. Highly recommend. And he is also my editor for It Would Have Been a Great Story, which is, let me take this sticky note off, which is the second book in the Maybe Duology, and that is coming out this summer. So
And may
yes,
I just say, I love the new covers for both of these books. They're just absolutely phenomenal. I just opened up my Kindle copies I got from your Kickstarter, and like they're just gorgeous. And I'm excited to dive into the new annotated. It would no, and maybe they fall in love. The first one, because I
yes,
have not finished reading that yet, so I'm going to start it fresh with the annotated version, the ebook I have, and it's going to be so much fun. I'm looking forward to
yes. Oh, that's awesome. See, I didn't even know that you had started reading and maybe they fall in love. So that's
it.
super exciting to hear. I'm very interested to hear what you think about the differences between the two. Um, that's going to be fun.
Yeah. Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Very cool.
All
All
right.
right.
So, you, I believe, are going to be reading the first chapter from Maybe.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. So at the end as well, thank you for reminding me.
Hmm.
So we are going to have our Q&A session, and as people come into the live, if they want to ask questions, they can. Otherwise, we're just reading questions that people gave us through Instagram and that sort of thing. And at the end of that segment, we're going to do our giveaway. And that's for all Kickstarter backers. So everybody is going to get a chance to win either a paperback pair of the books or a hardcover pair of the books. I was going to do a tier upgrade, but things happened. I got too excited and I sent books out too early.
Hmm.
So we're doing this instead. And then after that, I'm going to read Maggie's chapter because it's my favorite. And then after that, we're going to do spoiler talk. So if anybody's here who's read the books, they will be able to engage in spoiler talks.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be
Yes.
great.
It's going to be fantastic. I'm super excited. Okay. So without further ado, would we like to get to questions?
All right. So we got a list of great questions here. I want to add for people watching this live, please drop your questions in the comments. If you're here, we will prioritize you and what you want to hear. So, but in the meantime, we got a great slate of questions here. And so I'll start with the first one on our list. Emma, what inspired your first foray into this Maybe Duology universe?
So I was first, I guess, introduced to this world on accident. I wrote a lot in college. I was a creative writing major, and a lot of the things that I wrote were very sad, and they had sad endings. And it wasn't really because of any reason. It was just, it's easy to write sad stuff, right? And so one thing that I noticed was a lot of the relationships that I wrote ended up not ending super positively. So I had recently gotten married, and I was like, okay, I have to write a romance, at least try to write a romance so people know that I don't have like this terrible relationship with my new husband. Like I have to kind of like squash that before people start asking questions. And so I had never written a romance before, but that was what And Maybe They Fall in Love started out as. It was a serial romance that I released in my newsletter. So every week I would just send out a PDF of the next chapter, and I think I had like little illustrations that I added in on Canva. Like it was just a very simple thing. But as I was writing it, it became more of this. There was this magical element that got added in, and there was the mental health element of things that I was dealing with at the time. And I really started exploring this world where real world things and fantasy things intermingle and they collide, and they are all connected to these characters who are going through so much. And so that's kind of how I found the Maybeverse. Like I found this world, and now, I've got the two books. I'll show them side by side. Let
Oh yeah.
me give Elle her moment in the spotlight. She would hate it if this was real life, but she's not real life. She's fake.
It's true.
So there's the two books in the Maybe Duology right now.
Mm.
And I am currently drafting book 3 of a 4-book series that is also in the Maybe Duology. So this world has definitely taken over my life. And it's hilarious because that was not anticipated whatsoever. This was not the direction that I wanted to go in. And now it's like I'm trapped and I love these characters so much.
I mean, when
So,
people talk about inspiration, it's like, and the idea of like being inspired and like not come, it's like this stuff is not just something you make, it happens to you. Like that, I never really got that until I started writing novels, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this really, there really is like this whole other like something inside Addison that's like, no, here's the ideas, and you have to do this. By the way, this is mandatory. It's a
yes.
really, it's such a weird feeling, but it is really like it's really genuine. There's no other way to describe it. I actually had a question based off of that. I was really curious, talking about mental health and fantasy, and like the really fascinating like magical realism, contemporary fantasy vibes of this story. Did you feel like you were thinking mental health, let's take these ideas and make them fantasy? Or was it like, I like this fantasy idea, let's make it mental health?
So I feel like the two definitely coexisted in my head pretty naturally, but I think it was that I wanted to explore mental health and kind of with Elle it was what could make it worse. If I'm being honest. It was just like what
Oh,
could possibly make her, OCD, intrusive thoughts, contamination issues worse. Um and I was like magic. Magic could make this worse. So
magic.
we added mind reading. But it definitely, I would say that the mental health and the real world experiences informed kind of what I want this fantasy world to look like. And even now, as the fantasy world is getting more complex with what I'm drafting right now, it is very much informed by what I want my readers to feel about the human experience, like here in real Earth, like not
Mhm.
where there's mind reading. So I do feel like that sort of informed the magic, but it's sort of taken on a life of its own now, I will say. And you can kind of see that like in Caroline's story, the magic is more significant and it kind of strays a little bit further from her struggles, and is kind of building into something more.
Yeah, and I love that because honestly, to me, the best fantasy is not about, it's not about fantasy,
Hmm.
because there are layers of like there's escapism of like, oh, it's a world where there are ghosts, or people can, some people can read minds and see the future and do weird things in those connections. But it's not about those things. It's about people that feel so relatable and real and like visceral that you're just drawn into their stories like they're your personal like friends or relatives, and it's to the point where you really empathize with and sympathize for these characters. And it's not about the fantasy, but the fantasy is just a layer that helps really draw that together. And for me, like, I'm not like I'm not really writing realism. I don't write realism like at all.
Yep.
Everything I write has to have some kind of fantastical, magical, supernatural element, because that's how I explore the very real aspects of my own life. It's just, it just makes sense because that's what fantasy, sci-fi, those crazy out there genres are all about, like the very real human experience. And I think that when I read as a beta reader, it would have been a great story. Like I was like, oh, this is like not just a romance novel. It's like it's a really deep romantic human story with these really fascinating and interesting fantastical layers built in that help amplify who these characters are. But like real people are also that complex and that interesting and that just like um magical to
Yes.
be a little sentimental.
Yes. No, that is 100% what I want. The overarching, I guess, maybe verse theme, which I'm really exploring in this next series, but is definitely a big part of the maybe duology, is that there is so much more to everyone that you meet than what meets the eye. Like there's that C.S. Lewis quote that I'm going to butcher, but it's like you whenever you look at somebody, then it's I don't even remember enough of it to say it,
I
but
know what you're talking about,
you
but I
know what I'm
also don't
talking about.
remember.
Yes, yes, but there's somebody look up C.S. Lewis quote monsters or something. I don't know. Basically, he's like when you look at somebody, they're really cool and weird and it's wild and beyond our imagination who they truly are, but we just look at them and we say, "Oh, there's Joe from the feed store." Like we don't, we don't, we don't think about it that Joe from
Mhm,
the feed store is this wildly wonderful individual, just like we
mhm.
are. And so that's a big part of what I wanted to explore with the maybe duology.
Yeah.
So it really makes me happy that you saw that.
Oh yeah.
That's really really exciting as an author.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I can say, as somebody who is a beta reader and then an editor for your story, I got to see it evolve and shift, and that was really cool because I was like, was this part in there at first, and how did this go? But I love that process of seeing stories evolve. So can you tell us about how your stories have been shifting from like the first drafts of like Iowa bags, or even and maybe they fall in love, how it gets from that first draft to that final version. Like what shifts? How do those stories move and change?
Absolutely. And then after I say that, I want to hear about your experience because you offered your first draft as one of your rewards, right, on your Kickstarter.
Mhm.
I really want to hear about your experience doing that because I was amazed by you offering that. Like that was a really cool thing to me. So I want to hear kind of about your thought process with
Mhm.
sharing that with readers and
Yeah.
writers and things. But Iowa Bag started as a road trip adventure. They were gonna go in like a van, not a van. What are they called? Camper.
Winnebago?
Yeah, a solid Winnebago. Which was gonna be funny because Iowa Bags, Winnebago, I don't know, they just sound similar. And they were gonna travel to all of the different country clubs, and they were going to film the TV show as they traveled to each of the country clubs. And I think I had 34 at first. I don't know why I picked that,
Holy
but they were
cow.
like going out of state and all of this. But I was gonna have it be this really like closed quarters with Oliver and Tyler and Caroline and Shay. But when Maggie showed up, I realized I can't do this and have Maggie be who Maggie ended up being. Um, and then Everly showed up, and I was like, well, yeah, we can't do that. So, so it evolved because I got to know the characters and I got to know what they needed and who they needed to meet and that sort of thing. I still feel like it would have been hilarious to have Tyler and Oliver have to share a bathroom and, like, have
Oh
their
yeah.
toothbrushes in the same location. Like, I feel like
Oh my
sabotage would have
gosh.
been inevitable. Um, it would have been super fun to play with, but it was so much. I remember I had sticky notes on my desk everywhere that was like, "This is location 1, this is location 2," and I'm terrible with directions. So I don't know what, like, possessed me to do this. I was like, "This one's north, this one's south. This would take them 4 hours to get there." It was a mess, but, yeah, it evolved partially because I realized, like, "Oh, I'm not very directionally informed, and so maybe a road trip is not the genre that I should try." Um, but then also, realizing that these characters needed to be in one place for certain events to transpire, and that's about all I can
Yeah.
say without spoiling anything.
I mean, the characters tell you what they need, and
Yes.
you have to make the story work with the characters you have, or you have to get new characters, which is way harder than it might sound.
Yes, it absolutely is. Caroline was a character where I had to get new characters. She was originally 3 characters, and then Maybe They Fall in Love, and I smooshed all of their purposes together, and then Maybe They Fall in Love, and Caroline appeared out of nowhere. Um, so yeah, she was probably the best get a new character experience that I've ever had.
Yeah, and she comes out as a fully fleshed human being, where she's not just like a country club heiress or like an aspiring animator or all these. She's not just all these individual facets. She's a person with layers and experiences and all these things. And I think that works when you combine these characters that can feel kind of more one note or
Mhm.
not complete enough. You get a great result by just putting that together and then just like kind of sanding off the rough edges to make it a polished new character.
Yes, yes. Seeing what happens, just throwing them out there and seeing
Mhm.
how they play with your other characters.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as Marrow and Soul, so for my Kickstarter that I ran back in September, October, yeah, October, 2023, part of one of my like big like limited edition tier rewards was to send my first draft of Marrow and Soul to my readers. And that was a big ordeal because I was finishing fulfillment and I was like, oh, I have to like get this all formatted and ready, and I have to revisit this and look it over. And it was kind of it was kind of cringy to look back, but like a lot changed, but a lot also didn't change.
Mhm.
But there are definitely big differences. My prose got a lot stronger. There were characters who had bigger roles or smaller roles or got cut entirely in the course of the thing or got added as the evolution went on. But for me, the reason I think I really liked the process in terms of an exercise, in terms of sharing, was I could say, hey, this is somebody who's already read the actual book. Check out this first draft, and I'm going to talk about in these footnotes like this is how stuff compares, and this
Mhm.
is what I'm thinking about as I look back on the evolution from this first draft when I had still like barely even finished one manuscript before, I didn't know what I was doing, to the editing of like, oh, I have like this experience and know what I'm doing. Um, Seeing that change was really wild and really wonderful because I got to say, hey, I'm like, I've grown as like a person. I was like a baby author, and now I'm like a toddler author, just wandering around and uh, hitting plot holes in the walls and doing stuff. And
Yes,
it's a journey that's been fun to look at through that lens, but it is also kind of terrifying to have that because I've very rarely shared first drafts with people, and so actually getting to see that and send that out there was kind of liberating. It's like I can do this. I can just
absolutely.
let it out into the world. So I know that was a fun experience, and then also look back and see how much it changed and how much more I liked the final draft, thanks to my own editor and beta readers and the people who helped me out with that.
Yes, I love that, and I applaud you for it, and there's no way that I would ever feel brave enough to do that for either of these books. Now, the first book of the next series, I feel like I could because I'm already really happy with where it is and it's just a
Hmm.
rough draft. But these two, no. Mm-mm. There's no way. But I
Yeah.
thought that was so cool whenever I saw that. So, well done.
Thanks. That was fun. All right, so we got another question here. Uh, Kickstarter question. What's the most exciting thing about publishing through Kickstarter, which is obviously very different than traditional avenue?
That is part of why the giveaway for this live is going to look a little bit different than I originally planned because Kickstarter is so exciting because I get to send these books out early and I sent them out so early that I sent paperbacks out before I could do the giveaway. But the tier upgrade. And so I have loved nothing more than seeing my books arrive at people's houses.
Mm,
And not only that, but knowing that we did this together, there's that sense of community, there's that sense of like whenever we unlock stretch goals, like I'll show you, um like now that we have these new illustrations, like Everly gets her
mm,
kittens on every chapter because of Kickstarter, and Maggie gets her cryptic forest image on everything because of Kickstarter.
mm,
And just like knowing that this was a community experience and that I get to share stuff with people because the community of people on Kickstarter believed in these stories. That's just the best feeling. And it's honestly been really motivating me to write, honestly. I've been drafting a lot more, not these past couple of days because I've been on vacation, but over the past like 2 weeks, I've been drafting like crazy because I've been so hyped seeing all these books get to people's houses. And I'm like, oh, I could do this again. This could be something like I can write more things and more things can reach other people's houses and more things can change people's perspectives and open up their realization that they're not alone, if they're dealing
mm.
with these things. And so really just seeing these stories impact people and seeing them be welcomed is just such a cool experience.
Yeah, that's like the biggest thing to me about I think through Kickstarter especially, like through the broader like Bookstagram community, getting to meet authors and readers and stuff is great, but like through Kickstarter you get to understand stories because like think about the history of stories and storytelling throughout all of human history. It's all communal. When
Hmm.
you start off with storytellers, like whether it's nomadic or whatever, like they're not sitting around writing books and sending them off to publishers and waiting for your royalty checks to arrive. You are telling stories because this is your history, this is your culture, this is your existence, summed up and explored and artistically redefined, and all these things. That's so human. And Kickstarter is a way to say, hey, it's about as direct as you can get, short of walking up to people's doors and asking them, like, hey, do you want to partner with me in this story? To which I would say, I have to go back inside and close the door. Uh,
Please do not visit my home
yes,
again.
yes, please don't. But that idea of like this communal thing where it's just connection, that to me is just like the most amazing thing about this Kickstarter experience, because I have a book out in the world now, and your book's going out into the world in a couple months, your second book,
Hmm.
and all of these things are happening. But it's like the Kickstarter is something that will never. That's there. That's not going away. That now exists for each of us. Like we have this connection with our readers, people who are so passionate about the stories we created. They've partnered with us to bring them to life, and that's something I didn't anticipate how much that would touch me and
Yeah.
affect me when I
Yeah.
started this journey.
I know. I did not anticipate this many people being this excited about these books. And I feel like it really just shows that there's a need to explore the human experience. Like we were talking about, explore the human experience through fantasy. And I feel like a lot of fantasy books now are very heavy on the escapism and kind of
Hmm.
avoid the real world problems, not necessarily through any fault of their own, but that's just kind of where things are going.
Hmm.
And I feel like both of our stories, in very different ways, obviously, um, really look at what does it mean to be human, and what can that experience look like for individuals, and how can we, all figure this out together.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is really, really cool, and really awesome to get to share with people in that, like you said, communal experience. I love that. I'm
Mhm.
gonna look back on this video and find that quote, and like, it's gonna be a good quote.
Yeah.
The
Oh
communal
yeah.
one.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's 20 minutes in. I don't know if you remember that, but
Yes.
20 minutes in.
20 minutes and 25 seconds.
There we go.
Got it. I'll put a timestamp.
Yes, bingo. So we have another question. You kind of already touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to hear more of a direct answer. As an author, you write books. Like I said, it's communal. You bring it to readers. Um, Beyond the idea of I'd like to obviously make money and so I can keep doing this thing, what are you looking for when you're writing? What do you want readers to get from your books? What's either like the direct takeaway or more of the sense of, I'm not really sure how to describe it, but yeah, what do you want readers to get from your books?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, I almost want to fall back on my catchphrases for each of the books now, like that you're worth the maybes and you're never too
Mm-hmm.
broken to be loved. Like, I want readers to feel welcomed and valued as inherently valuable human beings, no matter what their situation is, no matter, what you're coming to the book with. I want it to feel welcoming. I've had readers describe my books as like cozy, as like feeling like a warm hug or a
Mm.
fuzzy blanket on a cold day. Like, those are the things that I want. And it's not because my books are like light and fluffy. Like, Maggie's not a light and fluffy read, right? But at the end of the day, there's that sense of community and belonging that human beings need. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of times we're isolated in this, growing technological world. There's, all of the different things that are trying to separate us, individualistic tendencies, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just get a reminder that you're not alone and you have experiences that other people have, especially whenever it comes to mental health, it can help break down those isolation barriers between all of us, And I really
Yeah.
want that. Like, I feel like, I don't know, I always struggle saying good things about my books. I love my books, but like, it feels self-promo-y. But I really do feel like these books can serve as a stepping stone into understanding for people, whether it's people who have experienced these things or people who know people who have gone through like Elle's OCD stuff, or Caroline's, her situation that she's going through. Um, and if it can act as that stepping stone because I've been honest and I've shared with people kind of my understanding of the human experience or what I've seen, then that's a step forward. And that's really all I can ask for, like, more than making millions of dollars off of your books or making it onto the bestseller lists or all of that. Like, I want these books to be a way for people to find their bravery, find their confidence, and
Mm-hmm.
find their courage to go and not be alone. Um, yeah, if
I
that
love
makes any
that.
sense.
Oh yeah. Like I don't have anything to add. Like I think that's really, it makes a lot of sense and it's very honest. And that's kind of the whole point of your books, I guess,
Yeah.
is the honesty, which I love. So yeah, I really like that. So I mean, what's next? I want to know what's
What's
next because
next?
now at this point, like I'm looking at all of these Kickstarter authors we know who've been putting out successful books, and it's like we did the thing. Okay, what's going
Yep.
on? What are we doing now? So tell me what's next. Like what's next for you as you're looking at obviously besides the 15 books that you currently have drafted in the series, and all of these things that you're doing. Like what's going on with you? What can we look forward to from the Maybeverse and from Emmett Hill?
Yes. So those books, there's a reason I have so many drafted. It's because they're all in rough draft form. I'm drafting that
Mhm.
series completely, and then I'm going back and I'm going to revise and edit and all of that. So that's like gonna take a minute. That's not anything we can look at anytime in the near future.
Mhm.
But next, I am really hoping. Well, let's go with definite things. Definitely what's next. Over the summer, I'm having several bookish events locally. So I'm going to
Awesome.
get to do some things with my friend RJ Setzer. It's funny because our books are also very different, but we do a lot of events together because we live in the same place. So we're going to be doing like some bookish conventions. We're going to be doing some author festivals. It's going to be really, really fun. And so I'm really excited to bring my Kickstarter books to those. I bought, because I had such a fantastic Kickstarter, launching campaign and everything, I was able to completely fund all of my summer inventory from Kickstarter. And so I was able to get extra books, which was not something I could have said about my sales last year. Like last year's summer events, I had to do that out of pocket. But this time it's just so cool. Like that's just a gift that I got from Kickstarter. But yes, so that's the next thing is author events, in-person events, stuff that I love, connecting with readers, all good things. And then as far as maybe verse nexts, my this feels scary to say because this is like my secret author goal that I really want to happen. My hope is that the next step is an audiobook for both books. More than that, I want to see an audiobook with bells and whistles, because one of my favorite things about audiobooks is how immersive they can be whenever there's, a theatrical element to them. So that's, in a perfect world, that is my next goal. I've talked to people about how to make that happen. That's still very in the works. Yeah, so no definitiveness about that, but that is my goal. So next in the Maybeverse is finding more formats to get these books out to more people.
That's awesome. I think it's fantastic. I'm wondering, are there more Kickstarters on the horizon, do you think?
Yes. Yes. I've been looking at I've been looking at adding more pieces that I was going to add, like, the further stretch goals that we didn't get to in this campaign. I've been looking at how I could bring those to readers, especially like the foil covers, because I mean, think about how cool it would be to have like all of the little hashes like be foil. Like
Oh my gosh.
that
Yeah.
would be so fun. So just something like that I've been thinking about. And how to bring that to everybody and what focal point to kind of bring all of that around. Again, comes back to kind of that hope of mine that maybe one day we will have audiobooks. But I know audiobooks and Kickstarter don't always really get along, and so I'm scared, which is why I'm being so hesitant. But yeah, we will see.
It's a tough thing. And the biggest thing is if you have a platform that you've been building and if you have people who are passionate about the stories you're creating, which you do, I can say everybody who's watching this live stream either now or watching it back later, they're excited to see what's next. I know I am. And I'm not just saying that because I was a beta reader and editor, but just like getting to experience the story was just like, it helped me be like, oh, wait, like indie authors can like do really cool stuff.
Aww.
And it breaks like the stereotypes and molds, because I'm an indie author, I'm an indie editor. I have read great indie books. I've read more not great indie books, and that just is an unfortunate reality of just. I've also read terrible trad books too, but whatever. But like that's just an unfortunate reality of our situation. Is not every book is amazing, but like seeing like the community of people like you and Amanda Aller and Kayla Ann who are just writing excellent like books out there made me feel like, hey, I can also write an excellent book and be part of the community and just like not just be part of it, but like celebrate the successes of like people doing such incredible things through like the platform of Kickstarter and through all these other things, like with author events and all these ways you're reaching out. I love seeing it come to life. I just really do. It's wonderful.
That makes me so happy to hear. And I'm super excited because it sounds like you have some author events coming up and your local bookstores have been so supportive.
They have, which is
so cool.
Wild. I never expected a Barnes and Noble to carry my book, which is weird because I have like a Barnes and Noble locally carrying my book.
Right.
And then I also have like I have some bookstores who are interested, but I have other indie bookstores who are straight up just not returning my calls and emails, even after I visit in person. And I'm like, everybody's got a different experience based on where you live. I guess that's Orlando for you. I don't know, but that's just part of the indie author life is just kind of figuring out what you can do and adjusting and rolling with the punches. I mean, you've experienced that with your books, with your new covers, with all these things, and that's part of the journey.
Absolutely. And finding the people who are passionate about indie storytelling and your own books as well
Mhm.
is really a game changer. I know I had a signing whenever, and Maybe They Fall in Love first released last year. I had a signing at half price, and I was lucky enough to just our half price was super supportive, and it was great. Went to Barnes and Noble, same question, same presentation, and they were like, "No, we're not doing that." And it
Mhm.
just depends on the managers. It depends on who's there, and it depends on who's willing to take the risk on you and your story. So
Mhm.
it's super cool that you found so many people to do that in your area. That's just awesome.
Yeah, it's been a great experience, and I'm really excited to see what's going to come because we're both on the newer end of this writing journey. But like, I'm thinking 5, 10 years down the road because I've got approximately 2.5 billion books that I really need to write, like right now.
Same,
And
same.
yeah, and that's going to be so collectively that's 5 billion books that are going to come out in the near future from us, which I think is enough to saturate the market. And I think we could
I hope
probably
so.
take out James Patterson and Sarah J. Maas and like kind of nudge them out with our massive
That's the
quality and
plan.
quantity.
Get right up there with Brandon Sanderson, at least on word count.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to open up my new production company, like Wyvern Iron Books, as opposed to
Wyvern
his Dragon
Iron.
Steel. Oh, that's not. I need to think of a better name. Let's stop the live stream. We'll come back. Also, I can come up with a better name. We'll try it again.
Okay, I like Wyvern Iron Avocado Press.
Those
There you
are
go.
all words that now
do,
exist in tandem.
do not go together.
Oh
And
my
yet.
gosh. So that's most of the questions we had planned so far. We did get a couple of questions from Instagram. Would you want to dive into those?
Absolutely. Hang on really fast. Why avocado?
Why avocado?
Yes,
Because
and it's
because avocado.
because avocado. And it just has Wyvern's hat. And it's just an avocado.
I have so much artwork I need done with
Yes.
avocados. Like I have so much I need to get
Like
done.
a chibi sticker. And it's like in the trench coat and it's just your avocado.
Oh my gosh.
That makes me so happy.
This opens up a whole new avenue of unexplainable merch.
Yes.
It's gonna be amazing.
Which we truly love. I was this close to making an Iowa bag shirt, and I still might, but like 3 people are gonna get it, and I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it, but
Yeah, it's really hard to say with merch. You never know. I didn't get a lot of merch from my own Kickstarter, so who knows?
who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a couple of questions from Kickstarter. This one's from Sarah Francis, and she's asking, "Who's your favorite character from your series?"
It depends on the day. I feel like today it's Tyler. Usually it's Everly, but I've been doing annotations and just seeing their interactions together. Um, I love them. I love them because it's so complicated and their dynamic is something that I personally don't really have any experience with, but getting to explore it was so fun. Um, and I don't know, I just love him because he's messy and he has a lot of my tendencies in him. Like whenever he gets upset, he'll like shut down and he tries to come up with funny one-liners and they don't always work, but Caroline always thinks that they're funny. I don't know. I love Tyler right now. That being said, like Tally and I don't know if I can say her name and another character and all of these things, like, just I've loved seeing them get to grow up and get to interact with other characters. And I mean, Ella's always going to have a soft spot in my heart, but I think Tyler right now is my favorite because he's just fun. He's just fun. I would want to hang out with him outside
Mhm.
of reality, where you can meet your characters. In Characterland,
Yeah.
I want to hang out with him.
Oh yeah. Tyler is like one of my cousins where I'm this introverted like person where I know how to put on the face and the performance for teaching or speaking or live streaming or whatever, but I'm
Mhm.
so introverted and quiet just as a person naturally. But if you give me a room with like my brother and my cousins, like we're just gonna be saying and doing stupid stuff for hours without pause for
Yes.
breath. And that feels like if I was in a room with Tyler, we'd be like trading stupid one-liners and laughing. And like my wife would be in the corner like, what
What
are you
is
doing?
happening?
What's happening
Yes.
here?
Yeah.
Speed. That's what it feels like. I definitely get that vibe from Tyler, 100%.
No, absolutely. He he could just go with the one-liners just like all day and not stop, and just like throwing random story ideas at each other. Like, what if, like, that was one of my favorite things to write. One of my favorite things to write was whenever he was explaining to Caroline why the mermaid wasn't a story idea. And he was like, a hair elevator for Rapunzel. I mean, come on, what don't you understand about this? And she was like, what's happening in your head right now?
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Yeah.
it's great.
I love him.
Oh, I really do. I think this might be our last question for now. So as a reminder, people watching, go ahead and leave your comments if you have any, and then we'll check those out as well as we go through the live stream, because we still got some time left to do some really cool stuff after this.
Yeah.
So last question for now. What chapter took the longest to write in this new book?
I took off chapter numbers, but it's the chapter where Caroline and Tyler drive to the hospital. Just, it took a long time to get the dialogue right, for the same reasons why I was saying I love Tyler so much. He was also a really difficult character to write, because I needed to make him not hateable while he still did some less than lovable things. And so that chapter, I don't know if you noticed that from like beta to developmental edit, or from beta to edits. It changed a lot, and his dialogue had to change a lot. And I went back to that chapter so many times, and just tweaking that and figuring that out took me forever. But it's so worth it because I love it now. But it was rough. It was rough to figure out what he needed to say to both be there for Caroline and be true to himself, and realize how he really felt about Everly. Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah, those scenes are tough because it's characters having to explore stuff and be honest, and you find those moments that it's like you don't quite know how to express it, but that's when you have to sit in it and put the work in, and then let the story essentially express itself through you. And the practice we do just helps the right stuff come out in the end, the best choices that we could possibly make. And I think that's really what's beautiful about this whole process.
Absolutely. So now I'm curious, for Marrow and Soul, what do you feel like was the most difficult chapter for you?
I was thinking about this when I first saw this question come in, and I was like, I actually pulled up my my writing log, right? I track everything. I went back to like 2021 and looked at the first like draft of Ghost Tablet, and I was like, which is what it was called before Marrow and Soul, and I was like, oof, I'm having a hard time making it out with all these details. But there's the midpoint of Marrow and Soul. There are two chapters. There's like this 2-chapter sequence that made some of my readers angry. And
I was hoping you said that part because I wanted it to cause you as much trouble and pain as it caused us.
Okay, well, here's the thing. So this 2-chapter sequence is this huge trial. The main character, Saffron, and the other applicants with her are basically having to do this big, like, physical, arduous trial. Originally, the scene was set in a completely different location. And so it had to change locations completely. I ended up setting it around this underground waterfall, which it was not in the picture before at all. But here's the thing. A lot of stuff changed about it because instead of this horizontal trek, they've got this vertical trek. And so a lot of the dynamics changed, a lot of the orders of the encounters, even a lot of the choices the characters made, like whether to help each other or strike out on their own, that kind of thing, those things changed. But the pivotal climactic moment that you're thinking about right now, that was virtually unchanged from the very first draft, because I was like, this is going to happen, and it has to happen. It's like a core event kind of situation. It's in, I can't remember in Doctor Who what they're called, but like those kind of things that are unchangeable. You can't go back in time and change a thing. Like that's that one. But that scene, I had to rework it a lot because I had to figure out, how do I build this up and make this work so that this scene concludes in the right way. And that was also hard. I remember writing it when I first wrote it, and the first draft, I sat back, I was like, man.
Why?
Oh, gosh. The story compels you, and it just, sometimes it's wonderful how much it just sucks the life out of you.
Yes, it does. It makes you cry so much. Yeah.
Oh man.
I don't even want to think about that anymore.
Yeah, let's move on. So
let's
I think
move on.
That's the end of our questions for now. If you drop more questions in the comments, we'll see if we can get to them with the time we have left. But I believe next up we're going to giveaway.
Yes, we are. Let me see if I can share my screen. And this is, again, reminder, this is for all Kickstarter backers. So you don't have to be here watching to win this. Any Kickstarter backer can win this, and I will be contacting them via Kickstarter and their email. And they will be winning either a hardcover or a paperback of both books.
I'm on this list. So like if
You
it's
are
me,
absolutely
I'm
on
like
this list.
ready. I'll make sure you get my information and we're gonna make it happen.
Yes, just don't say it on live, so that people don't know where you live. Okay, wait.
Oh yeah.
Here's this. Okay. And I made it the project we love, the Kickstarter logo, because I
Yes.
was so proud of the fact that we got that. It was
It's
awesome.
so cool.
All right, without further ado, whoop. Oh, it makes a sound.
You got it? You
Oh my goodness. I just sent her book out yesterday. Ah!
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yay. Okay, well, Amelia won. That's hilarious. She's my college roommate.
That's great. It's not my
I love
name, but it's
that.
still fantastic and she's gonna love it.
I love that. Yay, congrats, Amelia. I cannot believe that. I have to text her whenever we get off of live.
Oh yeah.
I literally just sent them out yesterday because I thought I was going to be able to meet up with her and like do a trade off.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, that whole timing thing, it's a headache. It's a fun
love
part
it.
about all of a sudden being an entrepreneur and like shipping books and doing stuff. It's wild.
Yes, I know the decisions we make. It's because I was so excited. I was so excited to get the books out. Anyways, yay giveaway. Okay, so next I would like to read a chapter from It Would Have Been a Great Story, but I'm not going to read chapter 1 because chapter 1 has kissing in it and I feel weird reading that on a live. So I'm going to skip. Also, just look at how fun it is with the QR codes there for the music.
That's so cool.
I'm just so excited about that. I feel like I just have to random non-segued shout out. Tommy Joe Agnew is the artist that I used for this, and I did whenever you were talking about walking up to somebody's door and like, that I literally did that to her. I walked up to her in the farmer's market. She was playing a gig, and I said, "Hey, I write books. Do you want to write music about my books?" She was like, "Absolutely, I would." And that was how I met her. And since
Wow.
then, like it's just been phenomenal, just like getting to know her as a person and seeing her create music for the books. So the Maybe Duology playlist is going to be a set of 6 songs that are written about the characters of the Maybe Duology, and that's coming out this summer.
Mm.
One of the songs is already out now, and you can get to it by scanning these QR codes. But the others are going to come out shortly, and I am just so excited and so proud of her. Another one of the cool things about being an indie author is we get to work with whoever we want to work with. So
Mm-hmm. It's
we can
fantastic.
we can hype up small businesses and small artists and be just as excited about it as they are.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Without further ado, because I'm stalling. Here's Maggie. Here's her. I don't know if you've seen it. There's her forest, her cryptic
That's
forest
awesome.
picture.
I love those chapter headers. They're so evocative.
I
It's
know.
fantastic. I definitely need to get some chapter headers for my books next Kickstarter go around. That's the plan.
Absolutely, yes. I highly recommend. I almost like for a second I was thinking, "Oh, I'll get one for each chapter," but I write such short chapters. There are 50 chapters in each book, and I was like, "There's no way we're going to be able to do 100 chapter headers, Emma. That is not what we need to do."
Mm-hmm.
But one for each character was so fun, and I'll go ahead and show because this is the live, and this is what we do. We reveal things. There's a secret illustration, in It Would Have Been a Great Story that I added after the Kickstarter. So the last chapter of the book is from Tyler's perspective, and I got that for them.
Oh, I
Yep.
love that. I
Yep.
love that so much.
I know.
I was so happy to read that chapter and be like, "Oh, yes. We get Tyler's voice in here." It's
Yes.
fantastic.
He finally gets to say something, and he didn't at first, so that was a revision. That was my
Mhm.
second longest chapter to write was the end because I don't know how to end a book. Anyways, I apparently don't know how to end a segue either. I'm gonna read Maggie's chapter.
Great segue.
Yeah. Nobody panic about Maggie. I promise she's okay. Okay. Sometimes Maggie's sage let Papa visit her, and he would bring her stolen gifts books, crowns, toys, nothing important, just distractions to pass the time in her windowless room. It was so she did not lose her mind, she heard the guards whisper outside her door. Maggie didn't know the truth of this. She did know she missed Papa when the days grew long between his visits. She knew the sunlight hurt her eyes when her guards led her to the seeing room's oak door. Maggie knew 4 years ago, when her papa bought her a doll, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "You are 6 today," that she would never escape. It was a lot to know when you were 6. Today, the guards came for her while Maggie colored a picture of kittens. She'd given them green fur, and one of the guards snapped her favorite green crown when he tossed the book away and hauled her to her feet. Maggie noted where the broken pieces rolled on her floor so she could retrieve them later. As she walked between her 2 guards, Maggie caught a glimpse of herself mirrored in the window. Colorless skin and raven hair, huge eyes hung deep in a narrow face. She looked more ghost than girl, and, at 10 years old, she had such a solemn expression that even her guards grew silent in her presence. She realized she could see her reflection because the world had darkened outside. That was unusual. Normally, they called for her after patrons had eaten their lunch, when they felt lazy and hopeful. Night was a place for harder questions, ready consequences. Her feet tripped in her thin slippers, and one of her guards caught her by the elbow. "Careful," he warned, the clipped sound inhuman to Maggie, who was so used to silence. "Sorry," she tried to say, but she lost the word in a rasp of sound no one could interpret. The seeing room in her sage's house only had one chair. Maggie would kneel on the floor, the guards would stand, and the patron would always sit, knees at Maggie's eye level, watching her hungrily. Sometimes she said the wrong thing, and they hurt her. Sometimes she said the right thing, and they gave her sweets and trinkets far nicer than the ones her papa brought. The trinkets were piled unused in a corner of her room. She ate the sweets because she was 10, and even presents from the people she hated tasted better than stale sandwiches. But no patron waited tonight. Her sage sat in the chair. He was younger than her father, tanned skin and honey-brown hair. His strong build and sharp jaw imitated a bronze statue, but instead of being beautiful, the sight made Maggie wince. Bronze hit harder than flesh. The sage leaned forward as Maggie knelt on her rug. After years of seeing, Maggie knew better than to look up into his amber eyes, but she could feel his breath on her exposed neck when he spoke. "Tell me, seer," her sage said, his voice poison pooling at the base of her neck. "Who did you see last night in your dream?" No warning, no greeting, no time to prepare. Maggie's pulse quickened. "A forest," she whispered. Her forest. Trees were growing, but the rot was faster. It attacked their roots. She hesitated, and his feet shifted in the corner of her eye. This was her only warning for the sudden warm pressure of his hand on her head. The terror of it filled her, but the relief as her sage captured her mind with their bond squeezed a shaking sigh out of Maggie's lips. It felt so good to tell him. "Something saved them," she whispered, without meaning to. "Who?" The question fell gently, like cool water on days when her room filled itself with stifling heat. It caught her off guard, and the wrong words slipped from her mouth. "I didn't see." His hand still pressed against her head, and it was easy for him to grip her dark hair, press until she whined from the pain, and push her back into her guards. He would not hurt her, because she had seeing to do tomorrow. Maggie's value placed her above bruising, unless someone paid beforehand. "Look harder next time," was all he said, and the statement sounded so mild that if she were any other child, Maggie wouldn't have questioned it. But she knew her sage. After 10 years, Maggie knew a threat when she heard one.
My gosh.
The end. She's
The
fine.
end. That's the whole book.
She's fine, guys. Everything's fine with Maggie now.
Man, that's oh gosh, this that like that I remember in the I think it was the beta read. I
Mhm.
think that was the first chapter
It was.
at that
Yeah.
point. And
For
so
the
I remember
longest time it was.
when that hit me, I was like, cool. We were like starting like strong with this like all this stuff. Like holy cow. But it's like
Yes.
it's so evocative, and even like listening to the description of this mysterious seer, when he's talking to her, I got a little bit of chills with like this is like it's just it's visceral. These characters are just
Yes.
they feel so lived in, and you don't have to understand the magic and the stuff and the dreams or all the things to be able to experience that human stuff. So if you are watching this and you support a Kickstarter and you somehow have not read this book yet, like wait till we're done and then like go read it like right now.
Yes, I loved writing Oliver, and another beta told me that she thought that Oliver was going to break book talk because he's a hot villain who's actually villainous. And she was like,
Yes. Oh my, and that's like, I just appreciate that. And I'm going to restrain myself from any kind of rant on anything on your live stream to which you graciously invited me to join you.
I
But like
support all the rants.
that's really that's great. They're not a villain. Like a villain isn't just somebody who does bad things.
Yeah.
It's much deeper than that. And I feel like Oliver, this character you've like created for this, really fills that role in those really, it's like not deliciously dark, but like painfully dark, like this
Mhm.
stuff. And it's very real, like dark stuff. And that's just rough because he's also like this super fit, attractive tennis dude. And it's like,
And
oh
charismatic, and
man.
everybody, like, you want to like him. Like, even Caroline, whenever they're playing tennis, she's like, she fell in love with the shape of who he could have been, but she knows who he
Hmm.
is. That was really fun to explore because we all know people like that, right? Like those charismatic
Hmm.
people who on the inside are rotten. Um, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anyways,
Man, well, thank you for sharing that with all of us because that's I mean, I've read that chapter so many times at this point because I beta reader and editor and all these things, but it's like it just really stands out to me as like a really strong way to bring us into the world that you've created.
well, thank you. I really like her chapter a lot. I love Maggie. Maybe she's my favorite character. Maybe I've changed my mind after reading that.
She's a good one.
She's
She
a
really
solid
is.
one.
Mhm.
She is. Okay, so now all we have left is spoiler talk. So if anybody who is watching right now has read It Would Have Been a Great Story, or maybe they fall in love and wants to scream about things, feel free, go ahead, put it in the comments. And if y'all don't, then I'm just going to start rambling about what I'm writing right now, which is going to be a spoiler for something no one has read,
Ooh.
which would probably not be great. So so y'all should say things so that I don't get off track. But Addison, is there anything spoiler wise that you want to dive into?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So so this whole magic system that you created, like
Yes.
when I first read this as a beta reader, I did not know what I was getting into. And I'm like, I'm not a romance reader, but I'm really excited to give this a try. And then I was like, oh, oh. So the system of how the seers and the sages are connected, and that whole like really just it's like this. So okay, so um, Wheel of Time,
Yes.
classic fantasy series. Have you read it?
I have not, but I've heard enough about it to know what
No.
to go on.
One thing Robert Jordan was really good at doing, and Brandon
Mhm.
Sanderson was really good at continuing to do after Robert Jordan passed away, was create these situations that suck, like
Yes.
so much. And you're just like, literally, like my wife and I listen to so many audiobooks, and we're just listening together and just like, ah. And so when I'm seeing some of these experiences with Caroline's dad and
Mhm.
with Oliver and with all of the depths of the stuff they inflict upon our beloved protagonists and side characters, like
Yes.
gosh, like so the reveal of Oliver being like this sage, I honestly did not see that coming the first time I
Really?
read it. I feel like it was well and it was like presented well enough where I could have picked it up. But I was like, this is where it all comes together. This is where it's all connected. And for me that really like hit me. It's like, oh, so he's just like he's awful and then he's like awful.
Yeah.
And that was really just such a huge impact for me, I think. And beyond that, just like getting to experience the meaning of like Maggie's visions
Mhm.
and like the idea of like somebody who's going to come and like change everything and like what that means for the future of just all of the seers and sages and readers, what it means for Caroline and Tyler's future, um, and for like Melody. And it's like, oh my gosh, like all of these things that came together, just like I read that final Tyler chapter and I read like where Maggie's kind of making more sense of her visions and sharing more things. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, that's kind of thing where I sit there like, ah, and I was kind of taking it in and just like breathing it in. After all this tension and buildup, I'm like, it's like that. It's the kind of chapter I can read like multiple times because I'm like, it's just I know it's gonna happen, but it's like you said, it's like a warm hug. It just feels so good.
Yes. Oh, that makes me so happy to hear because again, like that last chapter took a while to get to, and
Mhm.
yes, I loved writing because originally Caroline's dad was also a sage, but I love number 1, like, the dependence of the magic system, like, where the seers need the sages, otherwise, like,
Mhm.
they can't
Oh man,
outpour
yeah.
the visions and, how the sages abuse that power, but then also I loved exploring how Oliver, as a sage, needed the connection with Caroline's dad and, like, kind of that. So, like, even though Caroline's dad isn't a sage, like, he still plays this crucial role within this ecosystem of
Mhm.
the underworld because of just his influence as a person.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so anyways, it was super fun because I feel like of all the magical abilities that are within this world, and there's, like, 4 defined definite categories, and we've seen all 4 of them. We haven't seen all 4 of them in their totality, but we've seen all 4 of them, in the Maybe Duology, and they're explored more in the next series. Um, of those 4, like, seers and sages are the most complex to me because of that, like, coexistence and that idea
Mhm.
that, like, sages really aren't just normal people unless they can find a seer to bond to, you know? Yeah. So
It's
I'm really glad that you like that.
it's wow. It's such a great, such an interesting magic system. I mean, so I think about Brandon Sanderson's laws of magic. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but like basically it's just he's doing like these lectures and articles or on his website. You can read them kind
Mhm.
of about the way to create magic systems that work, whether they're hard magic or soft magic. And this one is like kind of in the middle of this hard magic and soft magic, where there are clearly defined like rules to an extent, but we don't always know exactly how they're going to play out, except we
Yeah.
see examples of ways they play out in the story. And like seeing a big part of that is like the limitations and costs of these systems. And to me, like the most heartbreaking part of this is like the cost of that the seers experience for what they
Mhm.
have, because like for Maggie, it's not even like, oh, she needs someone to rescue her. It's like, oh, she needs to somehow get completely disconnected from this
Yes.
literal like metaphysical leash that she has on her. And that's like that the idea of being tethered to someone who is abusing that connection and that you
Mhm.
can't shake is just like, oh man, like that's not even that's much spoiler talk because that's like the chapter we just read. But like
Yes.
still, it's like that's what really just like for the whole
And
time I was reading, and which made the fulfillment just that much sweeter when you see like there is a way out of this impossible predicament, and it's
yes.
wild and crazy, but it's happening.
It's happening and it happened. And one thing that I'm super excited to explore is now that it's happened and there's Melody and she is growing up with this idea that she wins every time, like who does that person become? Like if you're told from a young age that this is who you are, how does that change
Mm,
who you grow up to be? And that's something I'm exploring right now. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think I've talked about that before. I don't
I
know,
think
it's
so.
spoiler talk, so it's okay. But just yeah, like you said, like it's this thing within us that if somebody is even just like emotionally bound to somebody who's being abusive or who's being like all of these different things, like we're like, get out, I will fight them, like we will save you, we will, it's like a visceral response to us, right? Like we want to
Mhm.
help people not be abused. Like that's just,
Yeah.
kind of just in general, like a human thing. Like we don't want to see that happening. And so like the fact that she's the only one that could have done it is now super fun to explore in a teenager who's finding herself in these things.
Oh my gosh, because you're gonna see like Caroline's own teenage journey that she's going through with all these things, and she has these very different kind of, but still massive weights and pressures and expectations on her.
Yes.
And they're gonna manifest. I'm guessing they're gonna manifest with Melody in a different way, but still a very, again, I keep coming with this word visceral, very visceral way,
Absolutely.
in a very impactful way. That's just gonna really, again, use the magic system, use the fantasy to explore very real and uh, very relatable and emotional dynamics.
Right, because not only did Caroline, not only was she the flower and she was all these other things and she was, all of this fulfillment of these visions at first, right? But she was also the one who was supposed to take care of the twins. She was also the one who was supposed to be keeping their family together. Like, she had all of this pressure on her.
Mhm.
And, obviously Melody is going to grow up in an entirely different environment. Like, her dad's not going to be Oberon the terrible, right? Like, it's going to be Tyler the awesome. But she's still going to have this idea that, like, it is up to me to save everybody. And yeah, just, I am so hyped to see where that ends up, and just seeing where that already ends up and setting that up in this book was so fun, because yes, Caroline gets her story in her own right, but her story leads to another story, because there's always more coming. So
Oh my gosh, and I love that. I love the idea of this recapitulation of these ideas. It keeps coming up because, like, I feel like I see that with Caroline and Tyler and their family dynamics and the stuff they have to deal with and the things they're going to carry into their own relationship, where their relationship can feel like a safe haven, but the stuff still is going to spring up, and they're going to have a kid to take care of. It's going to spring up, and like think about my own books too, and the way that as I've explored like books 2 and 3 of my own series, like, oh, these things keep coming up in different ways. These characters mature and grow and learn and complete their arcs, and they're still human.
Yep, they
And
still
that
fall
is like,
back.
it just makes these. That's what makes these stories so good, and that's why I think I liked your story so much more than a typical romance, because it's not just hard stuff, break up, happily ever after. It's like it has like the complexity and nuance of like real life, and that's what comes through in this last Tyler chapter when you see they have a future planned, and they, strangely enough, considering the subject matter, the fantasy and the magic, they don't know what it's going to be, but they have some kind of inkling, and it's going to play out in ways they can never possibly imagine. And to us, the readers, I don't think could ever possibly imagine, which is what's going to bring them back to keep reading these books.
Yes. I'm so glad that comes through to you as a reader, and it's been so fulfilling and rewarding to hear that from other people who have read Iowa Bags. Like, as paperbacks are getting their Kindle ebooks already released, to Kickstarter backers, obviously not to anybody else, but just hearing people say that this is something that was relatable to me, or this is something where I feel these characters, or I binged your book in one night and I loved it so much, like those things make it so worth it, and it makes me just want to keep exploring this world, because I love these characters, and I really feel like Melody and Tally, now that it's their time to shine, like, oh boy, are they about to shine, because they have this legacy built up of their parents' stories that are just going to continue adding into the reader's understanding of who these characters are and what this world is, which hopefully is going to point back to, like, what your story looks like and what your family dynamics look like and who you are as a person, so hopefully that happens in the future. Like I said, not the near future, but in the future.
I have a feeling it's going to be stronger than the through line from Last Airbender to Legend of Korra. I think it's going to be stronger.
I really hope so.
For sure.
I mean, that bar is low. I feel like I can hit that. I don't know. Oh my goodness, that was disappointing, but that's a story for another time.
That is a story for another time, another live stream.
Yes.
All right, so I'm looking. It doesn't look like we have any further questions from the comments right now. So is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
Next steps for anybody who is watching either now or later, and maybe They Fall in Love is available now on Amazon and all other retailers. So if you don't like Amazon Bookshop or any of the other places, just go find it, read it. Hopefully you enjoy it, and it will feel like a warm hug. If you want to cry your eyes out, read Marrow and Soul, which is also available at all of the places and all of the things. And yeah, just follow us both on social media, and we will keep making you laugh and hopefully cry with our words, and it will be fantastic.
It's going to be great. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be heart stomping.
Yes.
It's going to be great.
I don't like that you're saying that while you're drafting book 3, but everything's fine.
Everything is fine. Just close your eyes, turn away. Everything's fine. It's great. Everything's good.
It's great. I need an electric lizard puppy to help me through this. Oh,
it's a good call. It's a great call.
Yes, it is. All right. Oops. I just clicked a button. Okay, cool.
Nice.
Let's leave before I break anything else.
Great plan. Thank you all for coming.
Cool. Yes. Bye.